Good morning. Welcome to the 354th meeting of the Baltimore Regional Transportation Board. At this time, I'd like to formally welcome two new members to the BRTB. First, I'd like to welcome Corinne Johnson, who's the Director of the Baltimore City Department of Transportation. And I'd also like to welcome Mary Lane. She will be the acting BRTB representative for Carroll County. Mary has been a long time serving member of the technical committee, and we just want to take this time to welcome you and thank you for your commitment to the Baltimore Regional Transportation Board.
Thank you, Sam.
You're welcome. The first item on our agenda is the approval of minutes. May I have a motion to approve the May BRTB minutes?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, could we go back to roll call just to make sure we know who's here?
Oh, sorry about that.
Thank you.
We'll start with roll call. Make sure everyone's here.
Morning. Annapolis. Anne Arundel County.
Present.
I'm sorry, was that present?
Present.
Oh, thank you. Baltimore City. Baltimore County. Carroll County.
Here.
Thank you. Harford County.
Here.
Howard County.
Here.
Queen Anne's County.
Here.
MDOT.
Here.
Annapolis Transit. MDOT MTA.
Here.
Maryland Department of Environment.
Here.
Maryland Department of Planning.
Here.
FHWA.
Here.
Thanks. Did I miss anyone?
Rebecca, this is Todd. Corinne Johnson from Baltimore City DOT is having some issues with her microphone, but Baltimore City DOT is here.
Okay, thanks so much for letting me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Now I'd like to move to the first item on our agenda, approval of the minutes from the May BRTB meeting. If everyone's had a chance to review the minutes, may I have a motion in a second to approve the minutes?
Queen Anne's County will make a motion to approve the minutes.
Annapolis will second.
Thank you. And now Rebecca will do a roll call of voting members.
Annapolis,
Aye.
Anne Arundel County,
Aye.
Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Carroll County,
Aye.
Harford County,
Aye.
Howard County,
Aye.
Queen Anne's County,
Aye.
MDOT.
Sorry, had problems unmuting. I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Regina. I'm sorry, I was having problems with my volume. My apology.
Can you hear me now? Baltimore City is here.
Yes. And with those votes, minutes are approved. I'd like to open it up to the public participation opportunity. This is an opportunity for the public to have a chance to speak to the board. If anyone has comments or any of the action items are of interest to them, please wait for that item in particular to be discussed. Mr. Lang, did anyone send general comments to you in advance?
Mr. Chair and Board, there were no comments sent prior to the meeting.
Are there any comments in the chat box?
Mr. Chair, currently there is no one requesting to speak in the chat box.
All right. Thank you, Todd. We'll now move on to agenda item number 3, the report on public comments. Ms. Monica Haynes-Benketta will present that report. Monica?
Mr. Chair, I believe Mr. Jacob Took is going to step in for Monica today.
All right. Thank you, Jacob.
Hi, y'all. Yeah, and I saw Monica was on the call, so shout out to her. Thanks for joining us, and we're keeping you in our thoughts. I'm glad to see you, tracking with us here. Just real quick, we closed up a comment on our draft plans for $74 billion in transportation investments for the region. So this was comment on our draft long-range transportation plan, Resilience 2050, as well as the short-range 2024-2027 Transportation Improvement Program and the associated air quality conformity determination. That comment period ran from May 17th to June 20th, so last Tuesday. Our paid promotion of this comment period included $10,315 across 13 print, radio, and digital outlets in the region. That did include some Spanish language print and digital ads. The digital ads alone earned a minimum of 166,000 impressions, so that's our baseline, but combining the reach estimates of the various outlets and modes that we use suggests a potential total of as many as 1 million or more impressions. That's through paid promotion. In addition, our social media campaign across primarily our Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn earned 9,200 impressions. And we did see some earned media from WBAL, WIPR, Maryland Matters, a few other outlets, some industry outlets, as well as thank you to our BRTB chair and our BMC board chair for their op-ed in the Baltimore Sun. Todd, if you want to scroll down a little bit, we have just a couple examples of the ads that we placed. And turning to public input or our public involvement, we received most of our feedback through our public input project page. We had a great story map as part of that, and of course the plan documents there that netted over 4,800 views. And we saw nearly 170 participants, including many representing wider organizations or coalitions, sharing 125 comments. We also hosted a virtual meeting as well as in-person meetings in Westminster, Belair, Glen Burnie, Towson, Stevensville, Baltimore, and Ellicott City. Thank you to everyone on the call today who was part of hosting those meetings. That was a great chance to discuss the plans in more depth, answer some questions from folks, and engage with a discussion on the drafts. These are a few photos. And just looking through the comments as we're able to now, that we see some positive sentiment toward investments in transit, bicycle, and pedestrian infrastructure. And we do see negative sentiment toward investments in roadways. Another significant source of negative sentiment is concerns about air quality, climate impacts. This is typically connected, although not universally, typically connected to some negative sentiment on roadway spending. And it's, I think, noteworthy that we did see few, if any, positive, or little, if any, I should say, positive sentiment toward roadway spending or negative sentiment toward transit. That sentiment obviously is out there, but it was not captured in our comments. So I think we'll have more to come on this, and we will be posting responses to the commenters before the next BRTB meeting. There is this project page, publicinput.com/resilience2050. It's still live, it's archived, so you can't put new comments in, but you can, read through at your leisure. So I encourage you to check out more. And that's all for me. Thanks.
Thank you. We appreciate your efforts on the public outreach process. I'd like to now move on to the next agenda item, which is the report from the technical committee. And I think we have Joel for this one.
Yep, I'm on the phone,
Okay.
but I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, well, the technical committee met on June 6th. And we started out with a discussion of limited English proficiency plan, the updates that were made from the plan preceding 4 years. And we voted unanimously to send that forward. BMC staff gave us an update on the Safe Systems Approach project from the UPWP. And Nicole Waldheim with Freer and Peers provided the details. She went through the traffic crash fatality trends in the region, Safe Systems Approach components, and outlined the project, which included a number of workshops, strategic highway safety plan teams, the development of best practices, case studies, and guidelines. And then she shared a summary of outcomes from each workshop and 3 selected case studies. The outline of the guidelines are in the document. Next, we moved on to Resilience 2050. BMC staff provided updates on the public comments period and TIP associated with the air quality conformity determinations. And then staff held a virtual public meeting on May 24 and has started in-person meetings. Next item is we dug a little deeper into the Maryland travel survey, this time looking at taxi travel and private cars in the Baltimore region. Some of the takeaways, the large shares of taxi and private car riders are those in the 45 to 64-year-old bracket, smallest share in the 13 to 15-year-old group. And looking at the income, the largest share of taxi and private car riders are those with lowest household incomes, less than 15,000, and the smallest share of riders earning 75,000 to 99,000. Race and ethnicity of taxi and private car riders tended most to be African Americans at 67.9%, and the smallest share were Asian at 1.4%. Purpose of the trips using taxi and private car were for personal business and other tasks, 42.5%. Smallest share of these trips were for social recreation, 5.4%. And next item we moved on to, sadly, my opportunity to lead the technical committee is coming to an end. So we had the report from the nominating committee. Slate nominated FY 2024 consists of MDOT as the chair, Baltimore County as the vice chair. Slate will be open for nominations on the floor in July when we have our meeting next week. And the new officers will then assume their roles immediately. Then we went into closed session. So the closed session items that we discussed were the Baltimore Regional Freight Study. I developed comprehensive freight needs assessment. It includes coordination with MDOT for freight commodity flow profile and computer automated vehicle policies and priorities. Then the making transit-oriented development viable in the Baltimore region. Evidence shows that TOD can improve transit ridership, but there's an impression that TOD doesn't have these effects in the Baltimore region. So this project studies best practices for TODs and likely effects of TOD in the Baltimore region, and developing regional guidelines to help the participating jurisdictions in improving the viability of TOD. Then the last item was exploring public attitudes regarding public housing and transportation. So we had some background material that was shared from newspaper and journal articles related to the tight housing market, rising costs. This in turn has pushed up rental costs as well. This particular task is going to include some data gathering from public and private sector, followed by a series of demographically representative focus groups. Findings and recommendations will be prepared for use by a range of groups. That's all for the June Technical Committee. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your report. We appreciate it.
problem.
Are there any questions for Joel regarding the studies? If there are no questions, we'll move on to the next item. Consideration of resolution number 23-23. Todd,
Good
you want to
morning.
provide the details?
Today, the BRT's BE, sorry. Wow. Good morning. Today, the BRTB is considering resolution 23-23. This is a resolution to approve the updated limited English proficiency plan for the Baltimore region. And thankfully, I'm going to be turning it over to Regina Harris to do the presentation. Regina, please take it. Thanks.
At least I started with a smile, correct? Okay, good morning. Today, we're going to discuss the Language Assistance Limited English Proficiency Program. And on the next slide, we'll discuss why do we need this program. As you can see, it is a federal law. It is identified under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. And so that we are clear, why do we need this and what is it? This proficiency plan is meant to, it's a term used to describe individuals whose primary language is not English and are not proficient in an English language. So the data in the report will show that 87% of residents in the region speak English as their primary language. Of the remaining individuals, 8.883% speak another language, but they also speak English very well. So the individuals we're talking about reaching here represent 4.15% of the region, but they are residents, and this region is close to the nation's capital. We do understand that we're going to have immigrants. So this isn't an attempt to understand who is making up our region and developing a plan to reach them. So then moving on to the next slide. The federal regulations do direct us on how to develop this limited English proficiency plan. There are 4 key steps that we look at each time we update. So key to this, the number and proportion of these individuals, the frequency with which they come in contact with our transportation programs, the importance of the service, and the resources available. And so to kind of get a sense of the importance of the service, if we were, we had intake for, say, Social Security benefits, or we were a hospital, those services impact the direct well-being of individuals, and they are required to immediately have all of these services available. What we do, we feel is very important, but it may not be the most critical service in the region. So we have looked at all of this, and I can say that for good or bad, we have not had people request in the last 4 years documents in other languages or assistance with translation at meetings. We did in the past, we did have an individual that wanted an interpreter at a board meeting, and that was provided through SHA. So it is something that we look at. So on the next slide. So as we look at this response, based on these low levels of individuals needing interpretation, translation, we're not recommending to the board that we do a wholesale service of translation. However, we do want to engage a diverse population. And so the documents that we do provide, and Todd, we could go to the next slide. As we looked at these services, we do translate for the board the full Title VI program policy and complaint form that is available at the front desk and on our website. The public participation plan is translated, into Spanish. That is the largest language group in the region. Our limited English proficiency plan is translated, and about the BRTB brochure. The executive summary of the long-range transportation plan is translated, and the vulnerable population index. So we have determined, that is our recommendation to the board, that those basic documents be available to the public in another language. We do have the ability to contract oral language services. We have a display at our front desk that if somebody were to walk in and our receptionist doesn't understand them, they have a display, they can point to the language. We have a 24/7 service that we can call and connect them and determine what the need is. We also occasionally provide training to other staff, particularly staff that engage most frequently with the public. We do provide notice on agendas and public meeting notices that these services are available. And we continually look at how we can do better, address services and gaps. So that is pretty much that. I will say our website does have a translate button provided by Google on the home page. It's actually on every single page of the site. You can translate content on our website into 105 different languages. For PDFs that are attached to our website, those documents can be put into a Google Translate function, and the PDFs can be translated into any other language as well. So then moving on, kind of the interesting fun stuff, when we look at the data, and there were a team of people at BMC that helped put this document together, but the 5 most common languages are located for the region are here: Spanish, Chinese, Korean, a group of West African languages, and Arabic. And that shows you the amount of speakers for each of those languages. And then on the next page, we tried to drill down, and in the full report that was attached to the resolution, there's detailed information for each jurisdiction. But what is interesting is the first language spoken other than English in every jurisdiction in the region is Spanish. The second language for every jurisdiction is Chinese. 4 years ago, it was Korean was the second language, and there have been additional, either more Chinese speakers or fewer Korean speakers in the region. And then you can see how Korean is the third for most of our members. And then the last 2, there's a lot of variety in the region. And it's very interesting to see and follow this information. So that is the bulk of our limited English proficiency plan. We have reviewed the number of speakers. Have they approached us? Is our service critical? And so we are recommending to the board that certain documents be key documents be translated into Spanish. And I will say for those individuals that do not speak English very well, the key language is Spanish, and that is 1.6% of the population in the region don't understand English well. Then following that, the next largest group, Chinese, is 0.41% of the region. So these individuals all have the same standing as anyone else in the region, but there are not many of them. So at this time, we do not recommend translating our documents into multiple languages, although we can do it upon request. We have the ability to do that either through our Google Translate site or through a service that we contract with. So that is what I have for this morning. If you have any questions, I'm here.
And with that, Mr. Chair, we ask the BRTB to consider Resolution 23-23.
Do we have a motion and a second?
Howard County will motion to approve.
Baltimore City seconds.
Howard County motion to approve, and Baltimore City seconded that motion. Rebecca, please conduct the roll call vote.
Annapolis,
Aye.
Anne Arundel County,
Aye.
Baltimore City,
Aye.
Baltimore County,
Aye.
Carroll County,
Aye.
Harford County,
Aye.
Howard County,
Aye.
and Queen Anne's County,
Aye.
MDOT,
Aye.
and Annapolis Transit.
Aye.
Thank you.
And with that, the resolution has passed. We'll now move on to agenda item number 6, the election of officers for FY24. At the May 23rd BRTB meeting, the nominating committee recommended a slate of officers for FY24, including Baltimore County as chair and Howard County as vice chair. The nominating committee is also offering the Regional Transportation Agency of Central Maryland to serve as the representative for public transportation. We would now like to call for nominations from the floor. Are there any nominations? Hearing none from the floor for the approval of the slate of officers and the public transportation representative, I ask a member to move and then a member to second.
MDOT moves.
Harford County seconds.
Now we can move on to the roll call vote. Rebecca?
Annapolis,
Aye.
Anne Arundel County,
Aye.
Baltimore City,
Aye.
Baltimore County,
Aye.
Carroll County,
Aye.
Harford County,
Aye.
Queen Anne's County,
Aye.
MDOT,
Aye.
and Annapolis Transit.
Aye.
Thanks so much.
Howard County's an aye as well.
Thank you.
The slate has passed and been approved. I thank you for the opportunity to serve for the last 2 years and welcome Ms. Walker as chair and Mr. Gardner as vice chair, and RTA as a transit voice on the BRTB. I want to also thank all the staff for their continuing support throughout this 2-year term for myself and Executive Pittman. We'll now move on to agenda item number 7, presentation of the Resilience 2050 plan. Mr. Zach Kaufman will be presenting and recapping the progress to date.
Thanks, Sam. Good morning, everyone. So as Sam said, I'll be presenting an update on the draft long-range transportation plan for the Baltimore region, Resilience 2050, adapting to the challenges tomorrow, as well as a summary of the public comment period. So the planning process for Resilience 2050 began a year and a half ago. We started by reviewing the transportation vision for the region, the regional goals and supporting strategies in November of 2021. Some highlights here: we held a comment period in fall of 2021, had over 150 comments. Some main themes emerged: emphasis on improving safety for transit and pedestrians, reliable and timely transit service, recommendations for a shift to sustainable modes and away from roadway widening. Accessibility was the most commented on goal, followed by promoting informed decision-making. So staff drafted and reviewed recommended edits along with the technical committee, and those comments that we received did influence the next slide here, the project scoring updates. The BRTB also considered and approved the project scoring methodology for Resilience 2050 in November of 2021. So the technical scoring methodology was reviewed by staff and we recommended some updates, working primarily through the technical committee in summer and fall of 2021. As a reminder, the technical scoring criteria are drawn directly from the regional goals. So we score projects on things like safety, accessibility, mobility, environmental conservation, security, and economic prosperity. So some recommended improvements that were passed in the resolution. We rebalanced weighting to double the points allocated to safety. We added transit scoring where previously absent, particularly in the areas of complete streets, safety, and security. We sought to clarify definitions and make the scoring less subjective where possible. We also sought to transition to outcomes-based scoring. So trying to look at how does the project contribute to creating a complete system. We also sought to clarify and integrate impacts to EJ populations into the scoring. So we added impacts to low income and minority communities in the region to most of the scoring criteria. And as I mentioned previously, many of the comments on the goals and strategies focused on improving transit accessibility, reliability, and frequency. And so in an effort to respond to those comments, we recommended and the board passed a slight bump for transit projects to having a maximum of 55 points versus 55 for highway. So the long-range plan also requires a look at what the region might look like in the future. The cooperative forecasting group worked together to produce the round 10 socioeconomic forecasts of population, households, and employment through 2050. These forecasts are key inputs to our travel demand model and are necessary for analyzing the potential effects of projects in the preferred alternative. We're projecting a 13% increase in population over the planning horizon, about a 15% increase in households, and employment growth of 26% in the round 10 forecasts. So as you all know, the plan must be fiscally constrained by the revenues anticipated to be available to the region. And so the financial forecast is composed of local, state, and federal revenue forecasts through 2050, passed by the board in January of 2023. One new element here is a local funding projection tool that can be replicated and improved for future LRTPs. And the summary of the local funding coming out of that in 5-year bands is included here. And that helps to paint a more complete picture of revenues available for transportation as required by federal regulations. So you've all seen this. This is the state and federal financial forecast for the LRTP, which comes from MDOT. Major capital projects in the plan are primarily anticipated to use funds in the state and federal financial forecast. And assuming only state and federal funds are available for the preferred alternative helps to ensure that Resilience 2050 remains fiscally constrained. So this slide shows the 3 previous LRTPs along with Resilience 2050 on the far right. Operating expenditures have stayed relatively constant at about a little over 50%. Over this period, though, system preservation has increased from about 21% in the 2011 plan to 30% in Resilience 2050. And at the same time, the portion dedicated to expansion has decreased from about 26% in the 2011 plan to 17%. So a smaller share available for the major capital expansion projects. As you know, those projects the projects submitted for the preferred alternative tend to compete for that $12 billion pot of funding. So you've all seen the preferred alternative. It is released in the draft document, of course, and that is arrived at through the project scoring process, estimates of project costs, both of which occurred last year, and then constrained by the revenues anticipated to be available. So 62 roadway, 36 transit projects were submitted. Ultimately, 56 roadway and all 36 transit projects were selected for the preferred alternative. The vast majority of projects, as I mentioned, are expansion projects. The plan also supports 13 specific system preservation projects that were submitted. This doesn't reflect all of the system preservation projects, obviously, but there were 13 large-scale system preservation projects submitted. Among the expansion projects, the chart here shows Resilience 2050 expansion investments. About 1.7 billion towards roadway in the front half of the plan from 2028 to 2039, about 1.95 billion towards transit. So a 54%, 46% split in the front half of the plan. The second half of the plan has more roadway, approximately 2/3 to 1/3 split there. Ultimately, Resilience 2050 includes 6.9 billion for roadway at about 59% and 4.8 billion for transit expansion at 41%. The plan also includes 280 million set aside from the expansion funds to support various strategies intended to improve air quality since we're a non-attainment area. So these are a variety of things, including TISMO, complete street strategies to reduce emissions through cleaner technologies, behavioral incentive programs, some capital improvements. In 2022, the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Group sought to identify the top regional active transportation priority projects, key gaps that need to be filled. And so we included that full list of projects under the set aside funding. There's also some funding set aside for locally operated transit systems. So I won't go through all of this, but these are the regional bicycle and pedestrian priority projects that were included in the plan under that set aside funding. Projects in every jurisdiction, including some regional projects such as completing the Patapsco Regional Greenway. Another feature of Resilience 2050 was a series of white papers. As you all know, if you've seen the plan, it is quite long. And so we tried to break down LRTP topics in a series of monthly releases of white papers from February 2022 to February of 23. A lot of different topics: project scoring, traffic safety, freight movement, transit, air quality. These topics are explored also in the plan, but this gave us a chance to break that down a little bit. So the public comment period recently closed last Tuesday, June 20th. This was a comment period for not only the draft LRTP, but also the 24 to 27 TIP, as well as the associated air quality conformity determination. As you all know, many of you were at one of the meetings throughout the region. One was virtual, 7 were in person. I believe we received 115 comments, around about maybe 120. This was the first plan to use publicinput.com as kind of a central portal for information. Public Input has a lot of useful tools for holding live meetings, posting videos, and so we use that primarily, guiding traffic to that website. Of course, it includes links to the documents, public meeting information, and most of the comments were submitted via Public Input. So this is just a screenshot of the Public Input webpage. You can explore that in more detail if you would like. It's publicinput.com/resilience2050. Our communications team did a great job with an outreach plan for the LRTP in the comment period. We advertised in a number of outlets, as Jacob covered earlier. Print, radio, digital platforms, created regional and local media kits, distributed customized media kits to each jurisdiction. A few examples are here. Okay, so we are currently working through the comments. We've contacted a number of you to help with some responses. We're drafting others, but some main themes have certainly emerged. There's negative sentiment towards the scale of roadway expansion in the preferred alternative, both in terms of the number of projects and the amount of the expenditures. There's a lot of concern with implications of roadway expenditures for climate change, land use and sprawl, and air quality and public health. On the other hand, there's a lot of positive sentiment towards more transit expansion and increasing transit reliability, as well as towards improving bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. So I won't go through these resources now, but these are just a few things that I've highlighted throughout the plan, throughout the presentation rather. The public input site, our BMC website, a story map that we produce summarizing the documents, and the white paper series. And so I think that is all I have for you right now. I could take some questions from the board on the presentation if there are any. Otherwise, I think Todd is going to continue the discussion regarding the public comment period with you all.
Any immediate comments from the board members before I go through kind of the next steps of reviewing and responding to the comments that we received?
Todd, I have a question. I can't see my hand icon to raise up my hand, but if you give me the permission.
Certainly. Go ahead, Kwaku.
Okay. Regarding the negative sentiment towards roads expansion and so on and so forth, who are these people? Are they the pro-transit or the bike pedestrian people?
Yeah, so I can go through it again. So as was presented earlier during the public participation report from Jacob Took, one of our communication specialists, we received 170 comments from 170 participants who provided 125 different comments. So there's some of the active groups that have been involved. They're at the meeting today. And I think, you know, what they're looking towards, as both Zach and Jacob had mentioned, is the desire to shift the expansion programming away from highway upgrades to transit, bike, and ped. You know, and just as staff, you know, we've seen the evolution over the last couple of long-range plans, where we are moving in that direction, maybe not as fast as some would like to see. For example, this plan includes twice as many transit projects as was included in the last long-range plan from 4 years ago. So in the plan that was adopted in 2019, there was about $2.5 billion in transit projects. This plan that is in front of you today has about $4.8 billion. So that's roughly twice as much. And the number of projects also, in terms of percentage of the expansion, also goes from 21% in the last plan of the expansion projects being transit versus highway to this plan where 40%, actually 41% of the projects are transit versus highway. So again, you know, I think the groups want to see a faster move to more transit projects. The board itself did include all of the candidate transit projects that were submitted within the plan and had to defer, again, 6 of the highway projects to make that happen. So again, you know, I think it's a sentiment that we have a new administration down in Annapolis who is, you know, trying to generate more transit projects. Hopefully, as we go through these future updates of the plan, we'll start getting more candidate transit projects that, you know, could be considered for updates to the plan. And again, this is a living document, so we want to just make sure everyone understands that, you know, as new projects come online in the planning phase, those could be considered to be included into the plan. So just for your information, Kwaku, it is most of the people who've been active within the program previously, but we have heard from new members, and we do appreciate all your efforts at the local jurisdictional level in kind of advertising this information.
All right, thank you.
Any more questions or comments from the board members regarding kind of the next steps. Just to let you know, we've distributed all of the comments to the BRTB members. So, the public can understand that the comments have been distributed widely. We're working with the local jurisdictions and the state agencies on providing responses. Again, there's a number of comments, so we're trying diligently to, give a due process to each one of those individual comments. And we're hoping to get all of that information out in time so that everyone can digest it before this comes before the board. Any more questions or comments? With that, I will turn it back to the chair. I believe our representatives from MTA are here, so we could move on to the next agenda item.
All right, thank you, Todd. The next agenda item 8, is a presentation by MTA. They'll share information on MARC expansion projects. They'll be focusing on closing the gap, extending MARC Penn Line service to Newark, Delaware, and VRE run through, extending MARC service into Virginia from Union Station. Mr. Sibte Hayter of WSP will present. Mr. Hayter.
Okay, thank you so much. I hope everyone is able to hear me. Hi, everyone. My name is Sibte Hayter. I am with WSP and in an embedded role with MTA Office of Planning, supporting the MARC rail projects. Next slide, please. I will be providing some high-level ridership updates to the group here, just to give an idea about how we are doing in terms of ridership, sort of like regrowth. Sam mentioned the service expansion projects and some of the associated planning projects that we are doing at our future plan, and then open it up for discussion. Next slide, please. So in terms of the ridership, the good news is that we are seeing a trending upward ridership trend across all modes. Through 2023 ridership numbers that we have available, it has gone up to 70% of the pre-pandemic levels system-wide, with mobility and core bus being the highest. Both for MARC and commuter bus, we are seeing up nearly a 40% sort of level of the pre-pandemic level in up to like March and April of 2023. Next one, please. Sort of going a little bit more into the MARC ridership and what we are seeing. So in March, what we have observed is that the average weekday ridership has passed 13,000, which has been the highest level in a post-COVID environment. And this is a consistent increase in growth that we are seeing across, so we are positive that it would continue to break that record moving forward. One of the trends that's really interesting here, as you could see on the bar chart on your left, is that for the weekday ridership, the highest is sort of concentrated during the midweek. So on Wednesday and Thursday, we have observed the highest ridership for weekdays, with Friday being the lowest. And some of this is consistent with how the hybrid work is playing out in the region. And then what we have also communicated and talked about in I think previously, the weekend ridership continues to outperform the weekday ridership, especially on Sunday, especially on Saturday, where we see the highest ridership come back across all 7 days. And again, that is also a trend that we are seeing nationally with commuter agencies, that the weekend ridership is seeing a better sort of comeback from a ridership perspective. So far, what we saw was that March 26th, which was a Sunday, had the highest ridership of any single day, and this corresponds to the Cherry Blossom Festival in Washington, D.C. So overall, that's good news. And moving into the service expansion, so the first one that I'll be talking about is MARC SEPTA closing the gap service. Through the Maryland General Assembly, MTA has a mandate to enter in good faith negotiations with stakeholders to explore and advance this expansion program into Delaware. So what this program would do is bridge that gap between Perryville and Newark or Wilmington, depending on operational constraints, and provides that critical connection between Maryland and Delaware from a commuter rail perspective. In terms of the progress that we have made so far, MTA recently finalized an MOU with the Delaware Transit Corporation, which defines the roles and responsibility for the pilot service. And the pilot service is something that was defined in the General Assembly mandate, which is 2 a.m. and 2 p.m. trains extended from Perryville to Newark or Wilmington, depending on the infrastructure that is available on the corridor. MT is also looking at investments at the Martin State Airport to increase train storage, and that would support extending the existing Penn Line service north of Perryville. Right now, we are actively working with our stakeholders, so SEPTA, Amtrak, and Wilmapco, and of course DelDOT being some of the key stakeholders there. This coordination is associated with what are the infrastructure requirements that we need to take into account for extending that service, what are the associated improvements that are needed to be made to implement this program. And one of them being the Newark Regional Transit Center that DelDOT is working on, and that's critical to extending the service into Delaware. Next one, please. So the second one being on the south, we have the run-through service to Virginia that would extend the existing service from Union Station to Alexandria in Virginia, and essentially provide a one-seat ride between Baltimore and Northern Virginia. This would also help to really enable improved reliability and convenience across the Northeast corridor between Maryland, DC, and Virginia. For what we have been doing so far, so an MOU between MTA and VPRA was also finalized that defines, again, what those roles and responsibilities would look like for specific stakeholders. And the pilot program that was included in the legislative mandates includes 2 morning and 2 evening trains into Alexandria, Virginia. This specific extension into Virginia is dependent on improving the capacity essentially between Union Station and Virginia. And there are multiple projects that are either in planning or development phase or are moving forward and are critical for MTA to extend that service into Virginia. And that includes specific improvements and the expansion project for Washington Union Station that would add new run-through tracks that are really critical for extending our service. 4th track at Lafayette, and of course the Long Bridge that adds additional capacity for running commuter rail between DC Union Station and Virginia. While those projects are being advanced by different stakeholders, MTA is also pursuing cross-honoring, and to do that, also looking at potential for improving schedule alignments with VRE. So you could have as seamless of a transition between a MARC train and a VRE train at Union Station as possible. To move these components forward towards implementation of this program, MTA is closely working with our partners in Virginia and with Amtrak and of course host railroad CSX to identify, again, what are those improvements that are needed to be done to keep moving this project forward. Next slide, please. So both of these expansion programs are supported by the MARC Cornerstone Plan update that MTA would be launching soon. This would include vision and goals developed from a perspective of and a framework of equity, service objectives for all 3 lines, which would be supported by sketch level modeling, and then defining a 5-year capital investment program based on those service objectives and what we learn in our modeling exercise. Our objective here is that we develop a vision for this Cornerstone Plan effort that reflects what the current travel patterns are, how COVID have changed, what are the critical needs for MTA, both from service and infrastructure perspective? And of course, what are the different federal funding opportunities that are available to MTA that we can use to advance some of these critical capital investments? More importantly, the aim through this Cornerstone Plan update is to define a roadmap for working with our host railroads, Amtrak and CSX, on service opportunities that exist across 3 lines. And then what is the outline of major investments that are needed to reach those desired MARC service levels that would be defined under this exercise. We are also planning to have a pretty robust engagement plan with our stakeholders, so elected official, host railroads, our partners across the region, and then the public, to develop vision and goals and to sort of do outreach exercise to educate the public about like how these plans are developed and what those needs look like for MTA and for MARC. There are 6 investment programs that the Maryland General Assembly has mandated MTA to develop, and these include investments that are needed for the 3 lines, and then the 2 expansion programs that I just talked about, the one being extension into Delaware, second one being extension into Virginia, and then lastly, the 6th investment program is extending the Brunswick line to better serve Western Maryland region. Next, thank you. There are a couple of station projects that are also part of this legislative mandate. So where we have to advance 30% design on both Elkton and Bayview stations. The 30% design is undergoing for both of them. For the purpose of this meeting, I would focus mostly on Bayview here. So MTA conducted a planning study to confirm the preferred location and the availability of property for the Bayview station. Johns Hopkins would be a key stakeholder in this exercise. Our 30% design is underway after finalization of the preferred site, and it is considering the integration of multimodal options, especially options for what we would see in the East-West corridor study. And we are also working with Amtrak to coordinate details of maintenance tracks, what the heights and locations would look like for platforms, and where the parking areas would be located as part of this new Bayview station. Similar to this, we're also doing we're also doing design efforts for Elkton and working in close coordination with both Town of Elkton and Amtrak, and that would be part of our extension into Delaware. So this sort of wraps up an update on the expansion programs and other associated projects we're doing. Stephen and I can answer any questions related to these projects, and if you have any additional resources, questions, you have information for Stephen on the screen, and you can reach out to him. Any questions for us?
I actually have a question. Did you gauge transit usage to MARC stations from the surrounding geographic areas, not just parking usage?
Are you talking about for Bayview or Elkton, or for the expansion programs?
For the expansion projects.
Yeah, so we have sort of, like there are previous studies that have been carried out to look at the desire for extension, or for sort of, service expansion both into Virginia and Delaware. And as part of the Cornerstone Plan update that we're doing, we would be looking at, sort of like, what is the market demand for transit for both of these expansion programs?
So did you gauge whether there were feeder systems available for these MARC train systems in the surrounding jurisdictions? That's more what I'm trying to get at than the expansion of just the lines themselves.
So there are like local transit options that are available under the locally operated transit systems. So for Delaware, for example, there is currently a sort of feeder service that's operated by Cecil County that connects that missing transit gap. I think it's a service that runs on weekdays that connect Perryville with the Newark station and some of those surrounding stops, and that would be replaced by this expansion program. And similar, I think on the Virginia side, there are, Northern Virginia has sort of like bus service that's available. And that is something that we have looked into. We haven't really coordinated the schedules of how that would pan out, but I think as part of this, setting up these investment programs, and as we advance more into a service and operational like plan phase of this expansion program, we would be looking at what are those associated, local transit options that are available, and sort of like trying our best to coordinate those schedules.
Yeah, because I just think it's integral to have feeder systems for the MARC trains. Otherwise, if you're completely relying on just the parking lot filling up, you might not potentially capture all the potential riders.
Right.
And you can also expand your TOD out further, because now people aren't just walking potentially to the train stop. They can also take perhaps non-demand or fixed route bus to the train stop and avoid the drive in the morning. Just a few things to consider as you expand stations, rather than having to go back to it at a later date and try to add in, lots operations to support the station.
Absolutely, that's a great point, and I think that's the framework that we are taking with a lot of these new projects. So, for example, for Bayview, the multimodal integration as part of that station is a very critical part of it. It is something that the design effort is considering, and of how would it integrate either any future service, whether it's bus service, light rail, or what are the existing bus operations that are serving this station. So for this project, for example, MT Engineering and consultants have been working closely with our Office of Service Development and making sure that it's not just an integration from a perspective of schedules, but also it's a more seamless connection for our riders. So if they are getting off from a bus, taking a MARC train at Bayview, it's as convenient of a connection as possible available to them. So it's definitely something that we are considering and will continue to, integrate into our planning process.
Yeah, and there are definitely other opportunities, since you brought up multimodal, for small capital investments around project sites. A bridge here, or gateway, sidewalk there, which will open up other opportunities for potential users to get to the station as well. But thank you, I appreciate it. Does anyone have any other questions?
Sam, it's Bruce, I do.
Okay.
This will be very easy. I'd just like to support and thank you for your comments. Just thinking about our plans to expand up to Halethorpe to serve the Elk Ridge area of Howard County that is close to the Penn line, but really doesn't have consistent transit service there. So I think that idea of what the feeder system is, and please make sure you communicate with the lots office at MTA, not just MTA service, to have them consider how they can support this, because I don't see the MTA coming down into Howard County on bus service, but we want to expand the RTA out to these key places, and the TDPs in Anne Arundel and Howard County are also trying to figure out how to get better service to the airport, and it would essentially be to the MARC station at the airport as opposed to the terminal, and then allowing those shuttles to get to the terminal from there. So yeah, please, as Sam alluded to, put some good thought into that, so we have connections from the central area of Maryland to BWI while we're expanding to the edges of the state.
Right. No, thank you. That's a good point. I think as part of the Cornerstone Plan update, we will be, when we do that sort of, existing transit needs and, what is out there in the market, I think coordination with the Office of Local Transit Support would be very essential. So thanks for bringing that up. And it is something that we would make sure that is part of our planning exercise before any service, long-term service objectives are developed.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hayter. Oh, you have another question?
Yeah, what are the the study schedule for this gap study?
I'm sorry, which study?
For the Mark Twain expansion gap study, what are the schedules?
So the expansion programs are essentially like there are multiple, like aspects of it. Right now, we have finalized the MOUs on both ends and been working with our stakeholders to like identify what the next steps would look like. And the schedule is, it's a function of working with our stakeholders, making sure that their projects are moving forward. So it is something that's a work in progress. For the Cornerstone study, it is something that we are sort of like, working on launching right now. So hopefully in the next few months, it would be up and going.
Okay, so your negotiation or whatever the discussion with stakeholders, will those study results be posted on MTA website?
I think wherever those, like those, either the studies, so generally like the studies are posted online, but if it is a confidential, like an MOU or an agreement, I think there are like state laws that it cannot be shared outside. But I think information that is helpful to the public and to our stakeholders, we make sure that it's available online. So it's an opportunity for us to get feedback, and it's an opportunity for us to like educate like our stakeholders about what the process looks like. So so to that extent, yes, I think we will wherever there are those possibilities, we will keep you posted and updated through our website.
Thank you.
Sam,
Yes.
I have a question also. So we're in the process of updating our transit development plan. Would you, I guess, either provide us with a copy of your presentation, or is there some way that we can, I don't know, have you speak with our lots, Hartford Transit, just about the gap study? And
Oh, okay.
and also-
That would be Mr. Hayter. Mr. Hayter would provide that for you, but we can be a conduit.
Yeah, we can provide a copy, and I think Stephen has been sort of like leading that coordination. So I would route that through him, and we can have that conversation.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hayter. Your presentation really prompted a lot of discussion. So it's exciting to see these expansion project studies move forward. We appreciate your time.
Of course, thank you for the opportunity to for us to having us and presenting.
The final item is other business. Is there any other business to come before the Baltimore Regional Transportation Board?
Mr. Chair, this is Todd, just on behalf of staff, and I know the rest of the BRTB, we would like to thank both you and Executive Pittman for your 4 years of service on the executive committee. We understand it's a lot of work, but we do appreciate everything that you've done over the past 4 years. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Todd. I appreciate working with you on everything we do at the BRTB, and I appreciated the staff support during that time. And I look forward to continuing in my role as a board member. I really believe that it's moving into excellent hands with Ms. Walger and Mr. Gartner taking their positions. And I look forward to continuing our mission to improve transportation in this region. At this time, I'd like to call for a vote to close the meeting.
Is there an opportunity for, can I make a public comment? I know I missed the window in the beginning of the meeting.
I'm sorry, please identify yourself.
Yep, this is Michael Sapanik. I'm from Strong Towns, Baltimore. I live in Cockeysville, Maryland.
Todd, can we open it up for an opportunity?
Yeah,
for
if we could
public
do it
comment?
quickly, Michael, because we do have people who need to kind of move on to other meetings.
Sure, okay. I'll try to keep it brief. So the other week, there was a editorial published in the Baltimore Sun. It was penned by county executives of Howard and Anne Arundel counties. And essentially the top line comment that I'd like to just speak to is it says that transit projects receive the majority of the plan's 22.4 billion allocation for specific projects. And you know, I've read the LRTP and me and others have commented on it. And this number, as far as I know, it's just not found in the plan document. The closest that the document gets to is a graphic on page number 178 of the all-in-one PDF, which is logically speaking, page number 4 of chapter 7. And that graphic shows 41% split to transit and 59% going towards roadways. So I'm just pretty mystified that where these numbers came from and that they were quoted in such a public setting when they're not numbers that are actually found in the plan document. So I'm just kind of wondering, is it possible that I find it hard to believe that they're misinformed about what the LRTP actually calls for?
Certainly.
If
So
these numbers are,
that article was actually written, we can go into it as we are responding to comments, but again, it's a mixture of preservation projects and expansion projects. So we can talk offline and try to explain how that number may have been misconstrued within that article. But again, there was nothing untoward in terms of what the comment was. It wasn't meant to be saying anything different. It's just how the projects were pulled together. So we can talk offline. Please contact me and we can certainly go through that. Okay.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, and we appreciate your commitment to growing transit in the region and putting a spotlight on transit's budget within the LRTP. Now I'm going to make a motion to close the meeting. Say aye.
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 Thank you, everyone. The next meeting is going to be Tuesday, July 25th, and it's going to be an in-person meeting at the BMC offices. So thank you so much.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.